Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Iconic Australian brand SPC found itself in the headlines last month when it became the first company outside of the health sector to require staff to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Others, including Qantas and Virgin, have followed since then, with many others expected to do the same. But SPC's decision put it on a collision course with unions. I wanted to speak to SPC CEO Robert Giles to see how the company has weathered the storm, but also to get an insight into the broader state of Australian manufacturing. Robert, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
So what motivated your stance on vaccinations? Why did you take that leap to be the first non-healthcare group to insist on vaccinations?
Yeah, Sean, it's a good question. I think the outbreak that we're currently having in Shepparton at the moment is a good illustration of what can happen to our business and to our staff. So our first responsibility and my accountability is to the safety and well-being of the staff on site, and we needed to ensure that we provided that. And when we come into our season for manufacturing in December, we've got to ensure that we can take all the produce that the farmers have grown specifically for us, that we can take that in and process it. And with the current outbreak in Shepparton, we've seen 56% of our staff in 2 weeks isolation.
Wow. So what vaccination rates are you at the moment?
Yeah, it's mixed at the moment. We're trying to get the clear picture of all our staff. Our plant in Emu Plains in Western Sydney, which has obviously gone through COVID issues as well, we're up to 98% in terms of confirmation of either one booked or an actual first or second vaccination. So we've seen that it can be successful.
Yeah.
Our Shepparton facility, we're hovering around the 40% mark so far, but we're still gathering the information. We've still had a lot of people haven't replied to us because the first requirement is to have a booking by the 15th of September.
Okay, and of course in New South Wales, it's a lot easier actually to get a jab, particularly a Pfizer jab, than it is in Victoria too, which must play into some of those numbers.
Yeah, of course, and we're working with the local health authorities and communicating and trying to help our staff if that is the issue of getting some time and also accessibility to some of the vaccinations.
Okay, so generally what has the response been from your staff themselves and then from the unions?
Yeah, from our staff, it's been overwhelmingly supportive. They've welcomed the fact that we're trying to make that workplace safe, but we do have some detractors, of course, of people don't like being told what to do, and I think that probably steps in first before the actual whether they were going to get the vaccination or not. They like to go through their own timeframes, and that's why we have made it a long time frame in terms of the end of November to have that second vaccination. We'll work through those particular individuals, as this consultation period continues. But in terms of the union, it's been really disappointing, the reaction from the unions. We think they've got a duty of care for all those members that are saying, provide me a safe workplace, and I don't want to be there if people are unvaccinated. But they seem to focus on the few that may be impacted if their choice necessitates they don't have a future employment with us. So they focus on the consultation period. We've proven many times that we're within our obligations of consultation, and what we are doing now is consulting with our employees. So we still ask the union to work with us. I know they're not against the vaccination, so work with us to try and get everybody vaccinated so we can get out of these lockdowns.
Okay, so has the heat gone out of the situation somewhat? I mean, I congratulate you, Robert, on SPC being the first to vocally take this stance, and others, I mean, obviously the airlines are it's easier for them to fall into line, but I'm sure lots of others will do that. And the miners and the banks at the moment are doing on-site vaccinations. They haven't quite mandated it, but even the New South Wales Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, she hasn't mandated it, but she's pretty much indicated that, unless you're vaccinated, you can't do certain things. So good on you for taking that stance. Has the heat gone out of the situation now, or is it still difficult?
No, I wouldn't say it's difficult. I think the conversation's changing in the wider community, and listening to Dan Andrews yesterday talking about that it's now a pandemic amongst the unvaccinated, I think starts to bring in that language and the people's freedoms that they won't be able to participate in, and how it affects them not just for their employment but for so many other elements of their daily lives. I think there's a lot of pressure on from other sources outside of just what we've put in place to say that vaccination is the right step forward.
Okay. So just moving more broadly onto SPC, I grew up on SPC, I've got to say.
Fantastic.
And it is an iconic brand. So how's it fared during the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting time for SPC. We've obviously under new ownership as of 2 years ago, been sold by the Coca-Cola company, and a real turnaround story. We've had our history of struggling through the business model that was in place, and we've fared really well out of the current situation. People are locked down and they're having their baked bean jaffles for lunch and their fruit for dessert. So pantry sales have really increased consistently over this last 18 months. A massive spike when it first launched in March and April, but people stayed with our brands and our products. Our food service products have been hit a little bit. So obviously with our restaurants and other hospitals closed down in a lot of ways, meant that we've had some hits elsewhere. But yeah, we ran out of fruit last year.
Oh, wow.
We'll get close to running out this year again, and we're really looking forward to the new season of getting the fruit off the trees. So all looking good for SPC at the moment, and we've also been busy acquiring. We've acquired 3 companies,
Yeah.
other food companies in that time as well.
Stay with me, Robert. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Robert Giles, Chief Executive Officer of SPC. So you mentioned earlier in the interview that December is the time where the fruit arrives. So I know nothing about your industry, so I apologise. But, spring presumably is a time where lots of the fruit is picked and then it arrives and it's, I'm not quite sure what the process is, but it's processed and canned. Is that your busy period like December through to March or something?
That's right. So apricots are the first fruit that's ripe and ready to come off the trees, and it normally happens around Christmas. And then peaches is next, and that's normally around Australia Day, and that runs for a couple of months, and then we move into apples and pears. And then we've got tomatoes that start in March, grown specifically for us. So yeah, it's a really right through from the end of December through to May is our real busy period.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just continue packing and labelling and making baked beans and spaghetti for the rest of the year.
Okay, and so you mostly use local fruit?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that's grown in the Goulburn Valley, all those fruit I just mentioned are all grown locally in the Goulburn Valley.
Great. And so as a result, some of the supply chain issues that have hit other organisations are probably less relevant for you. Having said that, have you had enough pickers?
Yeah, pickers have been an issue, and it's something that our farmers sort of work with. But we got all our fruit in last year. Sometimes there was a particular issues with the quality or size that they were picking because they were inexperienced. But in the main, the farmers did a fantastic job to get all the fruit that we needed. Whereas obviously a very secure supply link for them because they've had issues of getting their fruit to international markets. So they really focused on what we needed and were able to get us all the fruit that we required.
I suppose local food security, what the last 18 months has shown us is the importance of local food security.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really brought it to the forefront. We took 40% more fruit last year out of the Goulburn Valley than the year prior, which is great for obviously the farmers and our business, but also shows that the Australian community is demanding Australian produce. I think there's always been an underlying buy Australian first, but sometimes the dollar speaks first.
Mm-hmm.
But when our competition seems to come out of our fruit out of China or our tomatoes out of China and Italy, and that has been severely disrupted. We're here, the Italians haven't got a lot of stock for the following season. So it gives us a real opportunity to get people into our products, and it's our job to try and make sure that they stay with our products.
Now, one thing that COVID seems to have done, and this is anecdotal, it's helped the local manufacturing sector because the supply chain disruption is one part of it, but it's also, it seems that wholesalers and retailers like the idea of knowing the supplier, knowing the manufacturer, and actually having potentially more product in the warehouse than they would have previously in a just-in-time environment. It augurs well for manufacturing in Australia.
Yeah, it does. And we've had really good support from our customers. We've always had strong relationships across our major retailers, and they're really standing by our side at the moment. And I think they also see the advantage of, seeing that supply link so close to them. There's massive issues with getting containers out of the international scene, and then they get delayed in the process. So whether it's cost or time, dealing with people on the other side of the world at the moment is really problematic.
So it's been a good couple of years for SPC. What next?
Yeah, we're in a stage of turnaround, so we are very acquisitive. We're looking at companies at the moment to acquire. We're going to be looking overseas in the European area for companies to acquire that look a little bit like us. So we're really in an expansion mode. We want to build this business to a $1 billion plus food company, and we're on track for that and working really hard at it.
So SPC is iconic in Australia. Can SPC be iconic in France or Italy or Germany?
Yeah, we think it can, but we've also got many brands in our stable with our
Yeah, of
Goulburn
course.
Valley and our Ardmona, and the brands that we choose to acquire overseas can fit into the mix. We want to make sure that head office is absolutely in Australia, and we have strong roots in Australia and a strong business here as a platform. But we, just like companies like Nestle that are based out of Switzerland but have a global reach, we don't think there's any reason why Australian food companies couldn't emulate the same type of strategy.
Okay, and then locally, how much bigger can you get in Australia?
Yeah, we think there's a lot of organic growth in what we're doing at the moment, but we're looking at those categories just around where we are. We want to stay in agriculture. We want to stay from the farm gate, but we think there's lots of opportunities, whether it's in our fruit area, various products with tomatoes, and we've just recently acquired a frozen meals business, the one I mentioned in Emu Plains, which supplies the healthcare sector with frozen meals, New South Wales Health in particular. We think there's a lot of opportunities to grow in those type of categories as well.
Okay. Robert, thank you very much for talking to Fear and Greed.
You're welcome, Sean. Nice to speak to you.
That was Robert Giles, CEO of SPC. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.